So, a very good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to this live webinar organized by Motor India, powered by Sheer Technologies. For those of you who have been attending our webinars regularly, you would know this is our third webinar in partnership with Sheer Technologies this year. We have done sessions on the role of location technology in e-mobility and in last mile delivery. And today, our focus will be on maximizing logistics productivity through real-time supply chain visibility. As always, we have a star-studded panel of experts representing different stakeholders in the supply chain and logistics ecosystem who will share insights based on their valuable industry experience and learnings. A warm welcome to our esteemed panelists, our moderator, and our presenter for today. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and joining us for today's session. I'd like to begin by outlining the agenda for today. We will start off with a brief presentation by our partner, Sheer Technologies. Then we will have our panel discussion for about an hour, followed by audience Q&A. I would also like to introduce our speakers for our audience. Our presenter for today is Ms. Dobrina Laleva. She's Global Product Marketing Manager, Supply Chain Solutions, Sheer Technologies. Dobrina is based out of Berlin and brings over 10 years of experience in product marketing and business development from large corporations and tech startups. In her current role at Sheer, she is responsible for defining the value proposition, marketing strategy, and messaging, as well as planning and executing new product launches while managing cross-functional implementation of plans. In her presentation today, Dobrina will talk about how Sheer Technologies can help customers with better shipment visibility, which is critical to enhance logistics efficiency. For the panel discussion, we have 4 eminent speakers with us here. One speaker who has actually not joined us from the original 5. First up, we have Mr. Sudhir Chikle, who has over 2 decades of experience in global supply chain management, encompassing purchasing, strategic sourcing, component development, supplier quality, and development. Mr. Chikle currently heads the strategic sourcing function and is part of AL's Europe, South Africa, and India across automotive, commercial vehicle, construction, and agri-equipment industry. In today's discussion, Mr. Chikle will give an OEM perspective on supply chain and logistics. Then we have with us Mr. R. Shankar, CEO, India Operations of TVS Supply Chain Solutions. In his current role, Mr. Shankar is responsible for managing P&L of the India region for TVS SES and its joint ventures. He has over 30 years of experience across functions such as product planning, marketing and branding, supply chain and logistics, business development, and corporate affairs, including legal and government affairs. Mr. Shankar will bring in a very important supply chain solutions expert point of view in today's session. Our next speaker is Mr. Suresh KV, President and Head of Region India for ZF, which is part of the Germany headquartered ZF Friedrichshafen AG. Mr. Suresh is responsible for the governance and overall growth of businesses in line with the strategy which ZF has laid out for the India region. He is adept in strategy, operations, and people management processes and practices. Today, Mr. Suresh joins us as the only representative from the auto components ecosystem. And finally, we have with us Mr. Animesh Kumar Sahai, who is currently Head of Customers India and South Asia at Sheer Technologies. Mr. Sahai has over 24 years of experience and has worked in sales leadership positions for various organizations such as CA Technologies, RAD, Juniper Networks, and so on. Mr. Sahai will talk from a technology service provider standpoint on today's topic. And finally, to moderate the discussion, we have Mr. Jinal Shah, Director, Expanders Consulting. Over the last 15 plus years, Jinal has helped domestic and international organizations identify addressable opportunities and has given advice on critical success factors for scale-up and sustainable growth. His focus areas are on-road and off-road market, import substitution, and diversification opportunities. Look forward to the panel discussion, Jinal, with you at the helm. Some housekeeping information for our audience. We will have an audience Q&A at the end of the session as indicated. Please do share your questions in the Q&A window, and we will try and take up as many questions as possible. And as usual, apart from the Zoom platform, the session is being streamed live on Motor India's official video channel on YouTube. So that's all from my side. Now over to Sabrina for her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Welcome to today's session, where we will be discussing how you can maximize logistics productivity through real-time supply chain visibility. There was a short introduction already, but let me introduce myself again. My name is Sabrina. I'm the Global Product Marketing Lead for Supply Chain Solutions here at HERE Technologies. I am based in Berlin, Germany, and I've been with the company for over 6 years now. And before I actually start my presentation today, I would like to give you an overview of what I will be talking about. We will cover briefly what HERE does as a company, who we are. Then we will move on to talk about supply chain resilience and why we at HERE believe visibility is key. I will then talk about HERE's end-to-end shipment visibility solution, as well as give you a real-time example. And last but not least, I will leave some time for key takeaways. So who is HERE Technologies? We are the world's leading location data and technology platform. HERE Technologies helps move people, businesses, and cities forward by harnessing the power of location. We have more than 8,000 employees in more than 56 countries, and our history actually goes back all the way to 1985, where a small team started mapping the Bay Area. Ever since, our mission has remained the same. We create a digital representation of reality. And this covers not only roads, it covers campuses, university campuses, buildings, airports, logistics centers, and also increasingly the things that move: people, IoT devices, shipments, goods, vehicles. We empower our customers, partners, and developers to achieve better outcomes by leveraging our open location platform. We also have a very strong presence in India, where 40% of our workforce is based. We have 4,000 local talented resources in 10 cross-functional departments. Our team focuses on areas such as data engineering, operations, engineering, IT, and sales. We have offices in 3 major cities across the country, and actually over 6 consecutive years, we have been voted as one of the best companies to work for in India. Now, I would like to focus on today's topic, supply chain, and show you how location technology can power the logistics demand of today and tomorrow. I would like to start with some market trends, some market voices, and facts and figures around supply chain visibility and why we believe supply chain visibility is a top investment priority. Over 80% of companies, even before COVID, were lacking basic shipment visibility. Also, over 70% of businesses, they deemed their supply chain too complex to actually accurately predict ETAs at each journey point of a complex multimodal supply chain. And as we all know, COVID-19 has really accelerated the need for supply chain resilience. But it's not just COVID-19, it's also Brexit, Suez Canal, increase in consumer demand, container shortages, and many other topics that I'm sure are top of mind for everyone in the room right now. And here I would like to show you how location data and services can help you at each step of the logistics journey. It all starts with transportation planning, where location intelligence can help you improve dynamic route optimization. At the transportation execution phase, here, location technology can provide you shipment visibility, real-time ETAs, can help you monitor the location, ETA, and condition of a shipment so you can prevent delays, damages, and have information in real time. At freight handover stage, location technology, yard mapping, and navigation can help you improve inbound logistics. We can also help you improve last mile operations and drive costs down. And last but not least, at post-trip analysis, you can leverage powerful analytics engines to really improve decision making and improve future investments. I will now focus on the 3 stages that can help you improve supply chain resilience. Let's start with the execution phase. Location intelligence can help you monitor multimodal shipments in real time across complex multimodal supply chains. With location technology, you can identify disruptions and provide geofence alerts and notifications. We provide our customers with accurate ETAs and shipment condition information. We have a hardware portfolio that can help you monitor condition, complete full condition monitoring. We also help you gain real-time visibility of returnable, reusable, and warehouse assets seamlessly indoor and out. Think about containers, pallets, roll cages, forklifts, and many other examples of returnable, reusable, and warehouse assets. All of this helps you drive impact on key supply chain metrics such as service reliability, cost optimization, asset utilization. At Freight Handover, we help you enable smoother inbound logistics operations and handovers across road, rail, sea, and air. We also help you improve throughput of logistic hubs and reduce waiting times with yard mapping and navigation up to the loading and unloading docks. This helps you improve operational efficiency, reduce waiting times, and improve driver satisfaction. Last but not least, at the post-trip analysis stage, you can leverage our powerful analytic engine to report on shipment performance, condition, delays, SLAs. You can also report on asset utilization, dwelling, detention, understand how your assets are moving and are they costing you more money. You can derive insights with predictive data analytics for future business improvement and inform product, transport, and packaging decisions. This helps you drive impact on metrics such as process optimization, data ownership, and customer retention. So why do we think that you as a company should be investing in supply chain visibility? There are a lot of operational benefits, but today I want to focus on 3 main ones that we see from our customers. Investing in supply chain visibility can help you improve ETA prediction between 20 and 40%. With the help of complete condition monitoring, you can decrease shipment wastage between 15 and 20% and improve your on-time in-full performance. Last but not least, because of the ability to provide your customers with information about delayed or early shipments, because of the ability to improve SLA performance as well as reduce shipment damage, we see between 25 and 30% increase in customer satisfaction and boost in NPS score. How we solve it at Here? We have a solution called Here Shipment Visibility. This is an end-to-end solution consisting of 3 main components: the hardware or the sensor that you actually attach to the shipment, APIs, and then a front-end application that you can start using immediately to track your shipments. We allow you to track anything, anywhere across a multimodal supply chain, inside and out, all the way up to the right floor and room. We provide you with accurate, first-class multimodal ETAs. As I mentioned, we have a portfolio of hardware that enables complete condition monitoring, so you can detect damage in transit and also prevent damages. We are here a platform company, so we also allow you to customize your solution to meet your needs. Customization, some examples can include a map of your warehouse or manufacturing plant or yard, but also we enable you to seamlessly integrate the solution into existing TMS, ERP, WMS systems. So to summarize, with Here Shipment Visibility, you can drive impact on supply chain metrics such as meeting SLAs, reducing cost, and boosting customer satisfaction. And here are some of the use cases that we enable. Multimodal tracking of multimodal high-value shipments. We enable you to monitor the ETA and condition of shipments. Cold supply chain, a very hot topic today. Monitoring temperature, humidity. You can get tamper alerts and ETA notification and monitor other conditions such as acceleration, vibration, shock, drop, and more, as well as cargo damage control. All those use cases have applicability in different industries such as pharma and medtech, food and beverages, logistics, automotive, high-tech, electronics, just to name a few. And as I come towards the end of my presentation, I would like to give you an example of how we deliver end-to-end shipment visibility for Siemens Healthineers. For those of you who are not familiar with Siemens Healthineers, they are a leading medical equipment OEM. They have more than 120 years of experience and over 50,000 employees in more than 70 countries. What was their challenge? They wanted to track spare parts of time-critical and high-value medical equipment. So think about, for example, those big MRI machines. They have a very complex multimodal supply chain. They work with multiple forwarders globally. They were lacking real-time visibility of the ETA, condition, and status of the shipment. They were not able, sometimes deliveries were going to the wrong locations inside of a hospital, which in their case is the end customer. Or sometimes those shipments were arriving damaged, so they were not usable from the MRO, the maintenance and repair team. This was leading to wasted technicians' time. The technicians were missing their appointment slots. They were wasting time looking for those shipments indoor, or they weren't able to use them because those shipments were damaged. And this, of course, as you can imagine, was leading to significant costs and risks, inability to meet SLAs, as well as decrease in customer satisfaction. How does HERE solve it? With HERE shipment visibility, Siemens Healthineers is now able to track the location, ETA, and condition of high-value time-critical goods across a multimodal supply chain, all the way up to the right floor and room inside of a hospital. A smart sensor device, a tracker, was developed that enables full condition monitoring with the ability to record data offline and also global connectivity. What does this mean for Siemens Healthineers? Improved ETA performance and ability to inform hospitals and technicians about delayed or early shipments. Indoor visibility inside of a warehouse for equipment monitoring and on-time discovery. Reduced dead-on-arrival shipments with geofence alerts and condition monitoring. And what I already mentioned, indoor visibility up to the hospital floor and room with without additional infrastructure, reducing the time locating spare parts. When I mean without additional infrastructure, our hardware utilizes existing Wi-Fi signals. It's called Wi-Fi fingerprinting to actually locate the shipment all the way to the right floor and room. So as we now come towards the end of the presentation, those are the key takeaways I would like to leave you with. We at HERE believe that the supply chains of tomorrow will require accurate real-time ETAs as demand increases. Goods and assets will need to be located anywhere, anytime, in real time, outdoor and indoor. We believe that flexible integration into existing systems, coupled with a platform approach, will be key. And last but not least, we see from our customers that they're looking for infrastructure service solutions to keep total cost of ownership down. HERE is a company that has 30 years of experience in location technology. We're here to enable your logistics use case. We're here to co-develop, co-create, partner with you. The focus is on you. Thank you so much for your time. It has been really a pleasure talking to you today. As I finish now my presentation, I would like to encourage you to download our white paper, and that talks about the challenges and opportunities in asset tracking, shipment visibility, and fleet management. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dobrina. Over to you, Chinil, for the discussion.
Thank you, Bala, for the kind introduction, and Dobrina for the presentation. A very warm welcome to the panelists and the audience. The Indian logistics industry was and has become an enormously important component of GDP, businesses, and the policymakers. Prior to March 2020, like most of the other industries, the logistics industry was also undergoing a gradual yet permanent transformation in terms of technological adoptions. However, with the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, I think so the logistics industry has found itself in the forefront of disruption. It has not only tested its chain resilience, supply chain resilience, the efficiency, but also paved the way for an accelerated technological adoption across the sectors. The importance of location is a synonym with the hospitality industry. And in today's webinar, let us try and understand from the experts and the stakeholders the role of location technologies in solving some of the crucial issues that have been plaguing the logistics industry, especially given the complex and fragmented operating networks we have. With this, I'd like to open up the panel discussion, and if any of the panelists would like to add or have a different view in the dialogue, kindly raise your hand and we could expand from there. I'd like to begin the panel discussion, Mr. Sudhir. Very good afternoon, Mr. Sudhir.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi. Ashok Leyland has been in the forefront within the CV industry in terms of digital transformation, leveraging technologies, right? With the fluctuations in demand trends, which is being a new normal, bottlenecks across the supply chain, right? Just-in-time manufacturing. Many of the critical business decisions are largely based on logistics costs, quality, service levels. You as an OEM, does managing inbound logistic still remain a concern? Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, so thanks, Jinal, and good afternoon to my fellow panel members and all the participants. So I think inbound logistics has always been a challenge. However, in the recent times, with all the things that we are going through in the last 1.5 years, it has become even more so. And why is it a challenge? I think the fundamental requirement for a smooth supply chain to function is visibility. Unless you have a clear visibility of tier 1, tier 2, tier N, you will always be trying to second guess. And it is the second guessing, whether it is in terms of timely arrival of shipment or whether it is timely availability of material, about getting good material quality on time. I think the second guessing is what creates the entire uncertainty. So I think there is another softer issue here. While we all say that we need to have a transparent and visible supply chain, but then there comes a trust issue. How many of us are able to actually share information with our extended supply chain partners, both from OEMs towards the tiers as well as from tiers to OEMs? How many of us are very, very open and transparent in sharing the information? Because opening and sharing information transparency means that you are actually letting your plans know to everyone. You're letting the reality of the business on the ground open to everyone. So that is another factor which is obviously a challenge. While OEMs continue to demand transparency, but as OEM, how much are we being transparent? I think that's also another critical area. So, I definitely feel we have come a long way, but still the recent events have taught us that probably there's still a long way to go. That's my view, Jin.
So since you mentioned second guessing and trust being critical challenges, also as an OEM, how do you align different stakeholders along the chain, like vendors, transporters, dealers, right? Along the common goals, like you rightly said, and the processes, and more importantly, integrating those despite having different IT systems within the stakeholders. Any thoughts on those?
Yeah, so I think we have started deploying, or we have been deploying some digital solutions on the inbound chain as well as on the outbound chain. In terms of MRP visibility, in terms of ASNs, and also with the GST coming in, there is significant amount of let's say, the manual work which has been taken out of, and there is a lot of visibility which has come with the supplier portals and all. So those technologies are definitely there. However, in terms of, do I know when my supplier is actually going to produce the part and when he's going to receive the raw material from his TRN? I think to that level, the visibility is still not there to the extent that we want it to be. Similarly, in the outbound phase, I think from the transporters and truckers, if you look at the trucking industry today, a lot, while for outbound, especially for, let's say, the small commercial vehicles or passenger cars, you would have the car carriers, which are pretty much an organized industry. But if you look at inbound, a lot of the shipments are handled by people who own one or two trucks. Bulk of the shipments are handled by them. And they tend to be not necessarily on any of the platforms where you can actually track and trace. And then, of course, you have to rely on the usual phone calling and stuff like that. So I think a track and trace solution which brings these kind of people on a platform is definitely a need of the hour, in my opinion, which probably can definitely give a good visibility in terms of the track and tracing of the shipments.
Sure. So your wish list is to move from 35,000 feet to 5,000 feet kind of a visibility. Definitely. At this point, I'd like to bring in Mr. Shankar. Very good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to connect, and thank you for having me over here, and nice to meet all the co-panelists and also the audience. Good evening. Yeah, go ahead.
Likewise. Pleasure to have you, sir. Mr. Shankar, the stakeholders' expectations, right, with respect to predictability and reliability of ETAs for their shipments while having flexibility and transparency, as Mr. Sudhir also mentioned, right, has become an important criteria for being an efficient and an effective logistics service provider. Now, right, like Mr. Sudhir rightly said, what is your view on the scale of new age technology adoption in logistics industry, given the nature of fleet composition that we have in India? And more importantly, how is TVS leading the way?
Okay, thank you. A very, very interesting question. And before I comment to your question, let me kind of pick up from what concerns they raised and try and see how things are moving and changing. There are two ways in which OEMs take material from suppliers, and I'm talking from their direct suppliers. One is they allow the suppliers to supply to them. Another is the OEM takes the responsibility and then contracts it with a 3PL partner like us, and we take the responsibility of X works material being delivered by the supplier, and the entire logistics plan thereafter, including end-to-end visibility, is done by 3PL companies, and obviously we are a leading one in them. It's not that this is the only model that lends itself to visibility or supply chain visibility across all levels. And I'll come to your question of other things as well. Precisely for this reason, the asset-light 3PL partners take the role. And what is the role that we play? There are companies in India and automotive OEMs thereof who just have to electronically transfer what they're going to produce in the next 4 weeks, out of which 1 week would be a firm plan, to our system. And our system has the entire, they just tell us what car or what commercial vehicle or what two-wheeler to produce. Besides that, they don't tell us anything else. Our system knows the BOM for all the material, and we have, for each part, we have planned what's going to be the way in which we are going to pick it up, and that's where the expertise comes in. So we have clusters of auto center, be it the northern part, western part, southern part. There could be some milk runs which delivers online. There are up-country shipments and there are imported shipments. All those things, we take the responsibility. Knowing what their production plan is, our system, and it's an automated system, works out the plan for logistics, and it plans automatically how material should be collected, consolidated, and then sent across to them. And this end-to-end visibility, right from the time our milk run vehicle or our bigger vehicle goes to a supplier, till the time it's delivered on the line, we are able to track and trace it and give it to us through a system. And what differentiates bigger companies like us is today this has kind of become, any transporter would do it. Somebody can come and say, what are you guys doing? Since we have the entire part master with us, an entire part that we have picked up and the technology lends itself to, the supply chain manager is not interested in knowing where the truck is. The supply chain manager is interested in knowing what part is where. And therefore, at a part level visibility is what organizations like us can give you. And this helps you in going for any contingency planning, anything that happens en route. Of course, there is one part which Sudhir very rightly said, that does he have the visibility at the supplier end and the next tier end? There are ways in which we address it, but I don't want to take that time right now. Maybe at the end of this, I can do it. So the predictability part, what you asked, is very much something which is guaranteed, and it is our job to tell whether the material is going to come on the predicted ETA. And there are companies which have just 4 hours of inventory in their shop floor. And it is our responsibility to ensure that the material, even if it's collected from Delhi NCR region, to be given in that 4-hour window. And this would not be possible if we don't have a 24/7 control tower, if we don't have location technologies, if we don't have visibility end to end. And that's the way we are able to manage it. And God forbid something happens en route, we either alert the customer to go and change their production plan, or we take sometimes responsibility of airlifting the consignment and trying and bring it in and handing over to the customer. So all this is possible if there is going to be an absolute responsibility entrusted to a partner who does come with a capability, which is in terms of solutioning, which is in terms of, planning, and in terms of executing. And like what Sudhir rightly said, truck ownership is very dispersed in this country, and therefore we aggregate all of them under our platform and we manage them so that you get the truck owners who are ones, twos, hundreds, whatever it is. And this is enabled as a service and given to us. So your predictability issue gets addressed, your supply chain resilience issue gets addressed, visibility gets addressed, and we are able to rely, sorry, not resilience, reliability issue gets addressed in this. So that's what I thought as a comment that I would make on how we use technology and how we solve problems which many customers would definitely have. And this journey started actually a decade ago, and but we find that more and more people adopting it, more and more people coming on our platform to get this done. And we are also seeing a far higher adoption post the COVID, because this has disrupted a lot. And even though cloud technology is, helped people trust and link systems. Earlier, there was always this thing that, okay, you have everything on your system, I will not link the system. But today, we find CIOs and IT managers and technology chiefs within companies allowing free API interflow of material and of information flow moving. And there has been one company for us, a large construction company, where from any project, whatever they order, on their handheld when they order it, right until the time we deliver it and the POD is received and the invoice is raised and payment is made, it can be done touchless and end-to-end visibility is available. So I think that's how technology gets adopted and supply chain becomes a thing where, customers will definitely get benefited. So.
Thank you, Mr. Shankar. I think so you partially addressed Mr. Sudhir's concern on the trust issue on sharing information. And one of the key aspects I understand and realize is that it's not important to do everything in-house. Probably you can have a more advanced and collaborative partner, and all that data sharing and information sharing and trust is what it will build upon. So thank you very much. I'll come back to you shortly. But Mr. Suresh, I'd like to bring in your perspectives here. COVID presented the weak links and disruptions in manufacturing, business, and supply chain risks, right? Considering your global presence and learnings, what are the prominent steps that ZF has undertaken from end-to-end supply chain visibility, and whether it's really contributed to the cost savings and deductions in inventory management, as Mr. Shankar also said that he mentioned that 4 hours of inventory. So do you resonate with his thoughts, and what is your first-hand on-ground experience?
So first of all, thanks Motor India for this opportunity, and also my wishes to the co-panelists, my salutations to all the people who are attending seminar. First and foremost, I would like to say that now the customer has clearly laid down its expectations, and the logistics provider has said that we have all the technology. Now the question is, why can't a component supplier deliver on time? Now you see there are enough and more constraints around it. If you look at, I would like to start with saying that if you remember in our engineering days, we had one concept called production planning and control. But I think what is equally important is logistics planning now. And of course, the control part of it to ensure I would pick up the word predictability. The trust comes when you become predictable again and again. And then that gets developed. Now, the predictability depends on how stable the situation is, which is never. Thanks to the various constraints which we have, leave alone the pandemic. Even under normal circumstances, we know that there are constraints. Simple examples like a returnable dunnage. How much, if we are deciding on returnable dunnage because we don't want to spend money on packaging every time, and also we are environmental friendly to ensure that we don't use wood too much, we end up investing in returnable dunnage. Now, if you don't really plan for the number of returnable dunnage we have on a monthly basis, depending on the volumes, we will end up either having a huge amount of returnable dunnage, or we will end up having the material ready with us, but the dunnage not available, and then we are scrambling around for seeing how do we ensure that this material reaches the customer. So I think what is important, again, as it is in any other parts of the business, is the change management. How fast, how flexible are we? While, as Mr. Shankar very clearly said, if there is a delay, we ask the customer to change the production plan. That triggers quite some activities across the supply chain. The moment it is said that I'm not going to produce this model from now on, I'll produce something else, you know that there are a few suppliers who will immediately become a constraint. And it is not by design, it is by sheer the environment or the instance at that point in time, how you became a constraint. So what is important is change management. And the pandemic very clearly showed us that what we considered as good is good, but not good enough to really address the various issues which we faced. We at ZDF had, and as like any other multinational, or even for any other company, we also have quite some imports, quite some local parts to be bought. And then after assembly, we also have exports and also local deliveries. And the moment the pandemic hit, if you look at the first stage, what happened is it was a global impact. So we were looking at how do we ensure that the deliveries from other countries come in. Their predictability became a question. Whether the question always used to be is that do you have the material with you? Now the situation came when do you have the material with you? If it is yes, that doesn't mean that it will get to us in 10 days time or 20 days time, because logistics became a constraint. So we really went through a lot of difficulties there. And now to add the container issues and Suez Canal issues, etc., I think there were more constraints popped up than what we had expected. So global organizations like us, where we have imports, local supplies, local deliveries, and local and exports, we had to be a lot more planned. And that was a learning which we had. Of course, most of us really struggled. Not only, we can be very fair to say that it is not only the supply chain from tier 3 or even tier 1 and tier 2 struggle to ensure that we get the deliveries to our customer. So my take on this is, the question is planning. How strong are we on planning? How strong are we in forecasting that there could be issues coming up? Like last week, in a couple of weeks back, when I was in an industrial body, it said that the container shortage is going to continue for some more time. Now, the question is either we can keep quiet or we need to plan for this. Now, how do we plan? The number of containers in the system is fixed. And how do we ensure that at short notice we are able to get more and more containers? Or how do we ensure that we change the mode in a different way so that we still are able to support our customers with our deliveries? So planning, forecasting, and quick reaction response to the situations we are facing becomes critical in logistics. We used to talk about all this in production and shop floor activities, but I think it is also important that we need to look at it from logistics perspective as well.
Interesting thoughts. It's rare to find comfort in planning and forecasting. We as consultants face that front that every time you come up with a forecast, it's always wrong. I said, if you don't get it right, do it again. But you rightly said, the granular you plan, the better it is. And with the kind of bandwidth that you have globally, maybe that trickles down in much more structured way. But I'll come back to you, Mr. Suresh. At this point, I'd like to bring in Animesh from technology point of view. Animesh.
Thanks, Janil. I mean, it was a pretty interesting, and I was taking my notes. A couple of points which, and I want to kind of, I would say, stitch together a lot of things that was said. One of the factors that Sudhir mentioned was, and he started off his discussion by saying the visibility is very critical. And you talked about how accurate ETA is of paramount importance, and I fully agree with you. And taking that point, you also mentioned about how there are these small transporters and how it is very difficult to track these small transporters because there's no means of really getting inputs from them apart from giving a call or maybe email or something of that sort. Leading to that, I also heard about Shankar talking about the entire end-to-end visibility, and this brings me back to a statistics that was shown by Dobrina, which talked about almost 80% of the transport and logistics company today are they have either no transport management systems or they have a very little visibility, while there are 6% of the entire ecosystem which has the end-to-end visibility. So what I was trying to bring out here, there were points which brought in about a total end-to-end visibility. At the same time, there were points about certain small transporter which have got absolutely no visibility at all. And another very important aspect which came out today was the just-in-time. How Shankar is able to really transfer or rather ensure the inward logistics is managed, and which leads to an inventory management, a very, very, I would say, perfect inventory management with a 4 hours kind of response time, which is like amazing. And this is possible only if you have an end-to-end visibility. Okay, coming back to the last point, which was also, the 3 critical points which Suresh mentioned about the importance of planning, forecasting, and quick reaction or the response time. Now, weaving all these 3 things together, if you look at a technology company, any technology company, they use I would say, the location technology to unify these fragmented supply chain networks. So end of the day, what are we trying to do here? We are trying to ensure that there is an end-to-end visibility for the entire supply chain network, which starts with the inward right up to the outward. So starts from the supplier, manufacturer to the consumer. We're talking about a total end-to-end. And today, if you look at I would say this entire industry has gone for a change. Definitely COVID is one part of it. Apart from that, there is a change in the customer's expectation. And reason why I want to bring that topic also here is today in the COVID time, almost everybody has increasingly utilized the delivery, bought equipments from Amazons and the Flipkarts of this world. And even when they are spending about $100, the kind of visibility that these e-commerce company gave was immense. I mean, for that 100 rupees, right from the time the ordering happened, when the dispatch was done, when it was being packed, when it was sent across to the warehouse, when the normal delivery has happened, when the agent has picked it up, what is the ETA, when it is going to coming, whether it is getting delayed on time. All these kind of information was available. So what I'm trying to bring out here, that there is a huge change in terms of an expectation from a consumer, the same consumer like me or like you, when you go and sit in your official chair, and if you are bringing in a goods or equipment which is worth $100,000 or probably $1 million, your expectation for an end-to-end visibility is definitely there. And here in these case, here basically what we do is we divide this into three different building blocks when you're talking about supplying the technology. The first is, as Suresh mentioned, is the planning, which is the most important thing. How do you plan this entire supply chain? How do you optimize the route? How do you ensure that there is an element of dynamic rerouting available? How do you optimize your inventory? How do you do your space management? All this comes as a part of what we call as a planning stage of the entire location technology. The second part is definitely the execution, and this execution is important and leads to what we call as a real-time monitoring. And when you say real-time monitoring, another challenge comes in terms of a multimodal transport. I mean, there are at any point of time, your goods move from one type of a transport system to the other type of transport system. And when they move from one transport to the other transport, there is a lack of visibility. So how do you ensure that there is a visibility for the entire multimodal? This is the second part. Then it is also very important for you using this end-to-end visibility to identify disruptions. How do you identify disruptions? Because if you're able to identify disruption, that's when you will be able to do what you call the dynamic replanning. And that's where, again, it leads to what Mr. Shankar was saying, that if you're able to identify the bottlenecks, then you are able to ensure that you give that information back in, and there's a replanning for your entire production can happen. So see, the entire dynamic replanning is important. And the dynamic replanning, again, would lead to what I call as an accurate ETA, or this accurate ETA, because the ETA that you start at the planning stage is not the ETA that happens till the end of the delivery. It changes, but what is important is how accurate the change is. Okay, and the last and not the least is the post-trip analysis. See, while we are doing the planning and while we are doing the execution phase, there's a huge amount of data that gets generated. So what do we do with this insight from the data? Do we take the data and do we really analyze it for our future business insights? Do we do a post-trip analysis? Do we understand if a particular job was completed? What was the status of the job completion? Was it good, bad? What was the dwell time? What was the actual time versus the planned time? So all these information, all these three building blocks becomes very important from a location technology, which can play a very critical role in terms of providing end-to-end visibility to any supply chain.
So, thanks for elaborating a couple of these aspects. Like you rightly said, from your statistics, if it's around about 6% where we are seeing an end-to-end visibility, and my assumption is that it could be largely driven by these e-commerce companies, right? And you said that B2C, the consumer today wants everything updated on time and demands more transparency in the entire transaction. So it's a good benchmark to really look at. But you also mentioned multimodal transportation. Sudhir, I'd like to get you on this one here. In India, we are largely road transport focused logistics, and you did attempt and actually diversified beyond road into rail. You just mentioned vehicle on vehicle. I believe a couple of these chassis are also now transported via rail. But how effective do you think that your experience was moving from road to road to road to rail or multimodal transportation and getting those visibilities, transparencies, and the trust factor again, when you look at rail, you really lose control on the efficiency and productivity because it's not something that's managed privately. So what are your thoughts? Because that's a reality of life. The kind of mix we have today is almost 60-65% is road driven or even more.
Yeah, so I think first things positive. I think we had attempted sending our chassis by rail a few years ago, and allow me to say that we were not very successful. However, we started doing it a few months ago again. And I think so far, of course, it's in a limited way. I won't say that we have gone whole hog into it, but whatever limited way we have started, I think so far the experience has been very good. You mentioned about, first of all, of course, it is cheaper. There's no doubt about it. Second, in terms of track and trace, it's limited, but it is improving. It's I won't call it it's 100% traceable, but you do get good amount of visibility. Again, it's not any technology based; it is still manual, but you do get some amount of visibility. Third, I think with the improved rail infra which is being put, which by the way uh, goes contrary to our industry, unfortunately, but that's the fact of life that the rail is always cheaper than road. I think the rail mode is going to pick up very, very fast. And that would definitely bring in a challenge in terms of the multimodal transport because rail cannot reach everywhere. And therefore, you would need good trace and track technologies to be adopted so that whenever there is a handoff happening from one mode to another mode, your shipment or your product or your goods, you're able to track it and make sure that they actually get to you in the right time and right shape. I just want to share with you a small personal example where I thought that this although it was not a multimodal kind of a thing, but so I shifted about 8-9 months ago from Pune to Chennai. And when my household goods were to be shipped or transported from Pune to Chennai, at Pune, he came to my house with a small truck. I think, of course, the goods were not a full container load and all. So he obviously brought in a small truck and stuffed the goods into it. The first thing which I thought would have helped is obviously if each of my good was actually barcoded with a scan and stuff like that. But unfortunately, it was a single, 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of accounting. But that's first area where I thought the technology could have played a role. Second, when he actually took it in a small truck and then that truck went to some godown in the outskirts of Pune where he would have stored the goods for some time, and then so one handling would have happened there. Then he would have loaded it on a bigger container, which would have probably stopped at multiple places, and finally he would have again reached Chennai, stopped at some warehouse, and again transshipped into a smaller vehicle, and then brought it to me. I think in all this process, there would have been multiple handlings, and at each handling, there was a potential that one of my luggage could have been damaged or dropped. If we have a good trace and track technology, which is, I think this can be easily avoided. And more you get into a multimodal kind of transportation, this was a small example of household goods, but any other any other good which has to move through multimodal necessarily will have to have a track and trace technology in place. Otherwise, suddenly you will find people complaining and saying that multimodal doesn't work, which is not the right thing.
So, Mr. Shankar, your thoughts on this? Mr. Sudhir said that the moment we move from one mode to multi-modes, do you think that the challenges will multiply? Not only getting the processes in place for multimodal transportation, but also bringing in that real-time data transparency and tracking as a supply chain solutions service provider. What are your thoughts? Do you see this as a reality going forward?
Multimodal is going to come and stay here, and we also see a lot of things that are moving in. And there are three things that are happening in multimodal, and address multimodal, and that come to visibility in multimodal. One is, like from a manufacturer from Madurai to western part of India, northern part of India, we use road and we also use coastal shipping. There is a coastal shipping that goes from Tuticorin right until the port of Gujarat. And from there, we are able to take it. And it is almost the same time that a truck will reach. All these things became important because we did have a huge truck shortage internally also, especially because of the pandemic. And people started experimenting. It's not that these solutions have come in only now. These solutions always existed for bulk commodities. But for finished goods and for goods like, packaged goods for inbound transportation, these were never used that much because everybody was too road dependent. And subsequently these things changed. But this is where if you are going to hand off from one mode to another mode on your own, you may not be able to find out exactly where this visibility will be there, and that handouts will be difficult. But if you were to give it to a third-party logistics service provider and we in case engage everyone, that is where we pull all the data into our system and we give to our system what is required. I mean, for a customer to see. Otherwise, you will have to go and see a train tracking separately, a truck tracking separately, a last mile tracking separately. And, we are able to pull all the GPS data, the locational data from every single thing. And on our platform, we are able to give it. So it does away with the problem that you have. Now, how much of real-time visibility you want, how much of, visibility that you want in terms of, whether it is like you go to say an Amazon packet, it says left the warehouse, it's in transit. Do you want to monitor it in transit for the next 1 hour? You don't know. But there are some very, very critical customers that we have. Say for an ATM service provider, we have a 2-hour service delivery of the spare part when the ATM goes down. And at that same time, from the time the service engineer leaves the location to the ATM, our spare parts should reach exactly when the time the service engineer is expected to arrive. So it's not only a ETA of the part, it's ETA of the part plus the ETA of the service engineer to reach at that time, because our SLA is that we will not wait more than 30 minutes because we have to collect the returnable and go back. In most of these parts, ATM parts are all returnables. Reverse logistics are key component. Even in B2B, we have solutions like this, and technology, last mile technology and platforms that we have are enabling us and helping us in doing it. I'd also like to address one of the things that Suresh said, which is a very valid point that he spoke about. Tonnages are, because all of us want to be environment friendly. ESG is becoming a big component of every business. And how are you going to track and trace the tonnages, and what are you going to do? A company like us, for example, come in here and we say that we can design the tonnage, we can get it manufactured, we own it, and we rent it as a service, and we bundle it with transportation. So you don't have to go to a packaging service provider, you don't have to get the packaging manufactured, and we'll give you real-time visibility of where it is, and therefore your production will never stop for want of a return. So there are, and all these things are happening because we can either a QR code, barcode, or even an IoT, we can track it and provide real-time visibility for our customers. We have a solution called FlexTrack, which is what we do in this. So at the end of the day, end-to-end visibility, location technologies, coupled with a better planning and management of supply chain, will really give the predictability and the required, optimized way of logistics. And very clearly, from PPC, logistics planning and logistics service is a very, very key area, which maybe I don't have the data. I think in the automotive world, it's definitely more than 6%. But maybe if you take overall, maybe it's only 6% that is this end-to-end visibility. But it's far higher, at least in the automotive world, if not in the other parts of the business. It may be a little bit lower, especially when you're going to deliver finished goods. They say you deliver to a dealership a television or a refrigerator or an air conditioner. Maybe the requirement is not that time sensitive and time critical. So depending upon what, it's a production support logistics or it is an outbound logistics or where it is meant to deliver to a customer, depending on what chain it is. But even a normal B2C delivery today, the customer is asking for flexibility because the e-commerce platforms have come and disrupted it, and therefore everybody wants it. So I think technology plays a great role, and like what Animesh said, the data that we are getting out of it is what is the most important aspect of it, which is helping us optimize, which is helping us, look at all the things that can cause, disruption and try and see how we can avoid it. And by driver, by route, by location, so many data that's available to us that we are able to plan our logistics services far better than what we could do a couple of years ago. So I resonate very well with what everyone gave as an example.
Mr. Suresh, before I get on to Mr. Animesh, I had a quick question following up with Mr. Shankar. He did mention that the challenges still will revolve with multimodal transportations on getting the real-time supply chain visibility. And, we are talking about productivity, improvisation, cost, decreasing the cost and bringing in the transparency and everything. What is your experience as here technologies, and how do you intend to adopt your global learnings into Indian context? Given the fact that the multimodal transportation is much more balanced out elsewhere compared to in India, and how do we move from that 6% to a respectable 30-40% penetration of these visibilities to really see some productivity gains? What we are talking here largely is success case studies of large organizations or more organized industries, but there are highly fragmented other industries which need these technologies more. Now, how do we develop that ecosystem to make these things happen?
Okay, so there are multiple questions in that one question. Then let me see how I can answer that. See, I'll tell you what, right now, one thing you're right, that when we talk about the visibility part in the entire supply chain management, okay, that's very low, and which is good and bad both ways. Good because there is a huge opportunity ahead for everybody. Both from people who could come as a specialized transport management system and go down to this, and this goes back to the one that Sudhir mentioned about these small transporters who do not have the wherewithal to adopt. These could go and be a part of some of these transport management systems and provide the visibility. Okay, now this again brings back to the query of the security aspect. Would there be an integration between one system to the other system? Well, today I'm sure there is a lot of technology which is available to securely connect the two systems or two applications or hand over the data using APIs. So those things can be done. And so what I was trying to bring out here is that there is definitely a big play from a transport management system. Secondly, when it comes to a multimodal, when you're talking about, see, in India, multimodal is going to become a very, very big aspect moving forward. There's a lot of focus from the government of India on the waterways. There's a lot of waterways that is being developed. There's a lot of focus on the railways, and for whatever reason, the rail was not that popular at one point of time because of, and there's a privatization that we're talking about that, and then definitely there is the good old trucking industry, which is the biggest of all. So all these three industries combined together would and so will become important. And then if we talk about the visibility, now visibility, if you ask me, it's not so difficult whether we are talking about a single asset tracking, or we're talking about an asset tracking through multiple channels, right? End of the day, what is important is that you have a connectivity which is available. Now, let me give you an example. There are two ways of tracking an asset. When I say an asset, I'm talking about a large asset like a truck, okay, or I'm also talking about an asset which is a packet. Right now, depending upon what asset we are talking about, the visibility can be available using multiple technologies like RFIDs, barcodes. You got electronic logging devices, you got mobile applications, you got APIs. So there are multiple these technology which is available and which integrates with your supply chain to ensure that there is an end-to-end visibility available. So that part. And secondly, when you talk about, these are basically sensors, what I talk about, right? Apart from that, then there is a backhaul technology that has to be available to be able to pick up the signals from these assets and to be able to send it across to cloud. And the cloud adoption has also increased in our country, which means that once you are able to extract or backhaul these signals, you will be able to really process on it on a real-time basis. Now, backhaul also, our telecom segment is really increasing. I'm not talking about 5G right now. With 5G coming in, things are going to be very, very different because it's actually a very low latency network. But we already have 4G LTE literally available all across. We have LoRaWAN, we have narrowband IoT. So there are multiple technology which exists today for backhauling these signals onto our central database or central cloud. So end-to-end visibility is going to become very critical, and there are technology both from the location services perspective and the backhaul technology perspective and the sensor perspective available in the market to enable that that push in that area.
Interesting thoughts, Animesh. Mr. Suresh, like you rightly said, planning is critical, obviously, and so is predictability and the trust. But you have the experience of dealing of both sides, from the OEM on the demand side and then supplying. So inbound, outbound, from that perspectives. So given the uncertainty of planning in today's era, how do we really adopt these and translate these? What is your takeaway to replicate certain models like this so that end-to-end efficiencies and productivity are translated beyond ZF into their vendors and the transport service providers also? How do we translate these learnings into the ecosystem?
First of all, you see, though I did mention about planning, it's a very difficult phenomenon, okay? Because every time you're facing with a situation where it was not exactly the same as we had experienced before. So it has to have some amount of new thoughts coming into it. What is, and how do we learn and how do we pass this on? I think the only way we need to do is through whatever experience we have. And all of us, always we need to have a plan A and a plan B, sometimes even a plan C, to ensure that, you know, if something goes wrong, we are able to get back to rails pretty soon. Very rarely have we worked in the last 5 to 6 months, at least for sure, with just one plan A. It doesn't help the constraint at all. But what we have been trying to do with tier 2s is that, you know, whatever planning we are able to do, we pass it on. I am not saying that it is anybody's weakness that we have a forecast which is changing every day. It is the situation we are in, wherein we have an environment where whatever we forecast goes wrong. So the only thing which we can bring in is a predictability in terms of short-term changes when it comes to between a supplier and tier 1. The short-term is what we have decided or we will pick up in the next 1 week. There you remain predictable and then do the changes in the next 2 weeks so that you're not really putting the entire planning process into disarray, because now whatever I have, my customer doesn't need. Whatever I don't have, the customer needs it tomorrow. So I think this is one of the important aspects where, you know, a fixed delivery scheme for certain period of time, and that certain period has to be decided between an OE and a tier 1 would be different, between tier 1 and tier 2 would be different. This will also be different depending on the geographical situations. If the supplier is sitting, say, in Nashik or even in Pune, for example, we may talk about deliveries for the next 3 days to be constant. But if you're talking about a delivery from Chennai to Pune, then you're talking about a fixed delivery schedule of probably 8 to 10 days. This will help the planning process. The flip side of it is you may end up with inventories because you are picking up still the things which you don't want. But in the larger interest of the relationship, probably this is one thing which we need to do. The other flip side of it is when we talk about, as we are going more and more towards returnable tonnage, what happens is that if you are picking up the wrong material which is not getting consumed, then your returnable gets blocked. And when that gets blocked, what happens is we need to then run around to design something for shifting the material which we have. The biggest mistake or the injustice which we do to a product is that the product is ready with us, the customer has a demand, but we are not able to get it to the position of demand. So logistics is absolutely a necessary activity which we need to do, but the point is, how can we ensure that the predictability comes in? So more and more important is you need to have in the current situation, a completely flexible supply chain where we say that today I don't need anything, so I don't pick up from you. This is just in time to the highest level. To a situation where for a month or so I still pick up, which is wherein you end up with huge inventories. So we need to find a right balance between what we can take and what we need to change. And that, again, as I said, will have to be really worked upon for every component between with the situation, by looking into the supplier, customer, distance, the logistics which is available, and also various other factors. So I think the criticality is help the tier 2s and tier 3s in planning, but give them some amount of comfort that we will. Now, if you turn around and ask me, have I done that way? I would say it is yes and no. In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. But if you really look at it, that's how we should get. That's where we should get to.
I think so. Like most of these technologies, although they exist for a couple of years, adopting them is a challenge. Despite these challenges, I believe these kind of technologies will be the game changer and transformative technologies in the logistics industry to bring the much needed visibility, especially in today's volatile environment. I believe from what I hear from all of you is that it will also limit the blind spots of predictability, bring in more reliability and transparency, and keeping the customer in mind, delivering as per the ETA. I think so. There are a couple of things to take home, work on. And, before I summarize and hand it over to Bala, I think so all of us as stakeholders need to ensure that Indian logistics sectors is able to handle the government's Make in India and Atmanirbhar initiatives. So it's apparent and very, very important for us to actually contribute in every way that we could adopt these technologies, right from 6% to more, from 35,000 feet to maybe 5,000 feet. Earlier we achieved, probably will move faster in terms of achieving our goals. Thank you very much, all the panelists, and I'll hand over to Bala for the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you so much, Jinal. Thank you to all our panelists as well. I think we saw clearly today, I think the advantage and the beauty when you have market leaders from different categories within the industry, when they come and actually share insights. I think there was a very, very interesting and engaging discussion, and beautifully moderated by Jinal. I think you kept it as interactive as you had promised to. Very, very nice discussion. We have a set of very pointed questions, which I've kind of compiled here. Let's get this started. We have around 15 minutes, which is very good time for a Q&A round. So if any of the other panelists wants to comment, please feel free to do so as well. Right. So we'll start with what percentage of flexibility in material planning does a typical automobile OEM or a tier 1 company need to consider? So there was a round of discussion on material planning that we had. So there's a question related to that. Could we start with Mr. Shankar's take on that, please?
The question is what percentage of variance is allowed? Is it?
Flexibility, that's right. Yeah.
It depends on what kind of plan that you want to execute, like what Suresh said. Somebody wants to change it every day, which means the flexibility has to be very high to what it is. I don't think, let me answer it differently. I don't think it is a number that's important. I think what is more important is that if we have end-to-end supply chain visibility and if there is transparency and trust in the system, I think, and all of us know we live in a VUCA world where there are going to be market forces, environmental forces, and things that are beyond the control of anyone in the ecosystem. Things are going to happen. I think the variations can be handled without much of a pain to everybody in the ecosystem. What happens is when we are not able to sit together and everybody shares the pain of what we are going through, and when the trust is lacking, or I want to push my pain down to the next level, which is from a OEM to a tier 1 and a tier 1 to a tier 2, or in between a logistics service provider. That is where the entire, heart burns, if I were to call it, and the problem that who is to pick up that problem comes in. So all of us are geared to handle change, and if we have technology supporting us right from the planning stage to the execution stage, and if we have end-to-end visibility, this process of being nimble, being agile, and being able to change can be handled much simpler and easier. I would like to take it like a holistic answer. I'm not giving a figure to it, but I thought this would be one of the ways in addressing the problem.
Interesting. I think along with technology, as we saw during the discussion, trust becomes a very important factor in whatever we're discussing. So that's interesting. Mr. Sudeep, you want to add something on these? On the same, Animesh, you want to add something on this?
I just wanted to add something. Maybe Sudeep, why don't you continue?
Sure.
No, I think Shankar summed it very well. I think it's impossible to put a figure saying that I want X% flexibility or Y% flexibility. It has to be, it depends on the specific situation, and it would depend on each supplier. I mean, in a vehicle, typically you'll have close to 30,000 parts which come from different tiers, and with some you may have some flexibility, with some you may not have some flexibility. So I don't think there is any specific figure that you can put, but yeah, each component or each part or each subsystem will lend itself to some degree of flexibility, which could be unique for itself.
So, the point that I wanted to make here was when you talk about a variance of flexibility, one is the flexibility that you put it into your production. Second part is that how you can actually manage this flexibility. For example, if you have the visibility of the variance that you know is going to occur, then you can better plan it. Whether you're talking from inward goods coming into your warehouse, or whether you're talking about space management within your warehouse, or you're talking about the trucks into your yard management. So these can be better managed. The flexible, if you have this kind of a stuff coming in. So while this will have an impact, but technology has a way of managing these things in a better way, is what I wanted to bring on the point.
Interesting. Thank you, Sanimesh. Yeah. Right. Mr. Suresh, an extension of a similar question, probably I'd like to share it with you. Are Indian suppliers doing enough with material planning and forecasting in comparison to global players? Being a multinational, what will your take be on this?
It's a good question. Easy question to ask, difficult to answer. Mm-hmm. However, I would only say that we sometimes tend to believe that, rather than sitting on the board and doing a planning exercise, let's jump into action. And that's where sometimes the differences come in. I would rather say that we should really improve our planning capabilities and planning processes. If you really look at what it is generally said is, any initiative which takes around 70% of the time for planning and 30% of the execution. And if that 70% is well done, then this 30% can really be even compressed. But what happens is, in our eagerness to jump into action, we are not patient enough to wait for the 70%. So we say that, then we will take it as it goes, as it comes. I think when I talked about the plan A and the plan B and the plan C, I think that's critical when we have to do this. So I wouldn't blame anybody, but I would only say that this is an area for where there is scope for improvement for Indian organizations.
Okay. Mr. Sudhir, you want to have a take on that as an OEM?
Yeah, in fact, I was eager to have a take on that because actually, if you ask me, and I full credit to Suresh and the partners like them. From the global perspective, they're very good at planning and forecasting, but once they plan, the plan is cast in stone for 20 weeks, 30 weeks, and you're done. There is no way they will change it. While friends like Suresh, if I request him to change, he will change. So I'm happy with this flexibility rather than that kind of planning and forecasting.
Right. Very rarely you get kind words from customers, but then
Absolutely. Interesting. Very interesting. I think that flexibility is probably another important aspect of our supply chain here. Right. Okay. One which I want to direct to Animesh. There are two questions. I'm going to put them together. One is a very common thing that everybody knows right now: FASTag, right? Because having FASTag, it's become mandatory to crisscross on the highways. One is on FASTag. Is there any way to track and trace a vehicle using the FASTag? That's one. And the other one is on the other end of the spectrum. Are we using blockchain technology in logistics today in India? What is your take on both these aspects?
Okay, first on the FASTag, I frankly will not be able to answer that in entirety, because see, if it's an RFID, right, if it crosses a sensor, the vehicle gets registered, right, and through the mechanism of that sensor receiver, which is there at the toll, right, can track a vehicle. Okay. Secondly, the RFID, what happens is that RFID by itself you cannot track. You need some kind of a sensor to read it. If there is a continuous, if there are processes by which you're constantly reading the sensor, you can track it. Otherwise, no, you can always plan it. Okay, point, it crossed the toll A, it crossed toll B, it crossed toll C. That's how you can actually trace a RFID. Typically, what happens here when I said RFID, when for a small package asset, a small asset that you're tracking, what you do is that you have RFID, which is continuously emitting some kind of a sensor. You have a backhaul mechanism, which is inbuilt into that larger asset, which I would call it a truck. That backhaul actually picks up continuously, maybe at an interval of about 5 seconds, 6 seconds, or 7 seconds, whatever is the interval that you have made it. It picks up the signal, identifies where it is, and then is able to backhaul to the using some of the public network. Okay, which could be a public Wi-Fi, which could be a narrowband IoT, or which could be a 4G LTE, or whatever it is. These are the two things which I could understand from an RFID perspective. Second, on the blockchain, definitely blockchain is something which is becoming very, very relevant. And it's a cloud-based technology, and I think it is being increasingly used everywhere. Okay, now how exactly it is relevant to a supply chain, I think so I would leave the other people to talk about it more than I don't think so. I can answer that on that.
Okay, and specific to the Indian logistics space, is blockchain being implemented? Would you be able to comment on that?
People are adopting it. That I can tell you. Everybody, supply chain, yes, people are talking about it. What is the level of adoption from a blockchain perspective? That I don't have the figure. But yes, we're definitely talking about it.
Right. Can we request Dobrina, if you have anything to share on the blockchain question, Dobrina? Is that something that's used globally? Would you be able to share?
I'm more inclined to agree with what has been said so far. I think it's something that everyone talks about, and it's something that we'll be seeing more and more in the future. But would be probably more for the supply chain experts to talk about. I'm afraid I would like to agree here with Animesh as well.
Thanks. Would any of the other panelists want to take this? Yes, blockchain is something for the future, Mr. Shankar?
It is for the future, but right now it's still in many POC stages. We also are conducting a POC. It's very, very pilot right now. It's trying to see how we can bring it. We're working with institutions. We're working with research institutions, etc., and trying to figure out what we can do. But the use cases are not that we can kind of say we are commercially ready as it. No, not it.
Right. Probably that's one for a future discussion. We'll probably have a topic related to blockchain somewhere in future. Right. Okay, so there was an interesting comment and a question from another viewer. I'm just going to share this as well. Currently, there seem to be too many players in the tracking and fleet management field in India, but not many seem to have tailor-made solutions for companies tracking both. Okay? And also a comment: too much data is as good as waste of time. Can the panelists comment on this issue? Can we again go back to Animesh and maybe ask Mr. Shankar as well, and if the other panelists also want to share? Animesh, what would your comment be?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. When you talk about too much data, data is as good as our ability to use it in a usable format. Okay, and the more the data, and if you're able to derive a model out of it to exactly what you need, is when it becomes usable. So if you ask me, more the data, the better result, the better accuracy of the modeling that you're going to predict. Okay, I'm talking at a generic level because I'm not using a use case here, but I think I don't agree to the statement that according to me, more the data, the more actionable intelligence we can gather out.
Right, right. And probably usable data becomes information, and that's what really matters, right? I think.
End of the day, if you're talking about any predictability, if you're talking about any taking some actionable intelligence out of what has happened in the past, that can happen if you're able to get some inputs out of it, right? And input is, see, I'll tell you what, if you look at statistics, the larger the sample size, your probability of having a correct data is higher. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm running on statistics now. I'll leave that to another person to talk about.
Shankar, you want to add something?
I fully agree with him now. I mean, the more the data, the better your predictability, the better you can analyze it. And today, computing power is so high that you don't have to worry that you have too much data. I mean, even if it's not even quantitative data, even if you're getting qualitative data, there's a way and method by which you can kind of do it and analyze it. And I'm not a big data analyst or a specialist in that, but I've seen that being used very well. So I think the richer the data, the better it is. And I think, and it's easy to, store it on the cloud, use it when required. So I would also tend to agree with that image that that's not going to be, more data is bad for us. But I would not go through that. Yeah.
Interesting, right? There's another question related to AI and machine learning. We'll probably keep it for another day. I've reserved one question for the last, which we will take up right now, where maybe all the panelists can share your view. It's a very broad one, but a very interesting one to know your thoughts. It's one on cost leadership. While India is known for frugal manufacturing, do the panelists think India can achieve cost leadership in transportation and logistics cost as well, considering how fragmented and fractured our system is? If yes, how and when? So to sum it up, cost leadership in transport and logistics. This is the question. We'll probably take a view. Jinal, please feel free to share your views as well. We will sum up our entire discussion probably with this. Anybody would like to go first?
Can I start on this? I think the question is a very valid question, and this is what actually a lot of us are working upon. If you look at logistics costs as a percentage of GDP, in our country, it's somewhere around 12 to 13%. And if we were to look at very advanced economies, it would be around 8%, and in a country like China, it would be 9 to 10%. So that's the fact. Government of India is working with the industry, and I'm being part of CII National Committee on Logistics. We're working with them closely to see how we can align and bring it down. And there's a 5-year plan on which the industry and the industry comprises of logistics operator users as well as academia. We're working on how do we come and get this. And there are multiple things that are going to happen. One is we have seen that it has to be not necessarily just an efficient logistics. That is, first of all, this figure of 13% itself is yet to get fully validated. There is a CII panel and there is a research agency that has been nominated to get this data validated, and it would vary from industry to industry, so that all the industry will lend itself to this. The second one is there are a lot of regulatory bottlenecks which are also getting changed, which is going to help wastages in the system. The entire cost is not because of it's because we are more inefficient than what other countries are, rather than to say that we are not able to operate it in a manner in which other countries would operate. So there would be multimodal coming into it. There's use of technology coming into it. The fast tags of the trucks getting piled up if you're doing road transportation. There are, and also this is also because a lot of perishable commodities are getting wasted, and that is also getting counted as a logistics cost. So all this put together, but the government has clearly mandated by 2025, this is where we have to get it. In the last 3 years or 4 years, there has been a first time under the Ministry of Commerce, a department of logistics has been formed. This is a nodal agency which coordinates with 7 different ministries and tries to see how we can bring it done. It will be, like you said, you can have a session on how do you bring the logistics cost down. Suffice to say, there is a plan, there is an intent, and there is a heavy weight action that's happening. Results we'll have to wait and watch.
Great to hear. I mean, very, very positive and optimistic, Shankar. Mr. Sudhir, your take on that?
I think I fully I agree with what Shankar has said. In fact, there are live examples. Before GST used to have octroys and all kinds of checkposts and all kinds of state government taxation guys stopping the vehicles. After this, you've already seen that the traveling time that a truck takes is definitely shorter. So I think more regulations, more infrastructure is on the anvil, and with the right technology input and the multimodal coming in, I'm sure the cost, I think the target that has been set, which Shankar mentioned, I'm also quite optimistic that we'll definitely be reaching there.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Suresh?
Yeah, I think I can only add a couple of points. One is, we need, when we talk about logistics, the immediate thing which comes to our mind is the transportation. But I think it's a complete value chain. And what we need to do is, like the way we had value stream maps in manufacturing and production, or when we write process flows when it comes to a sales or an inventory or even a finance process, we need to look at logistics end to end. And when I say logistics end to end, is right from the time the product gets out of the assembly line, from there till it gets into the assembly line of the supply of the customer. I think that's the entire logistic chain. We may agree, all of us will agree that 60% of it is the transportation from location to location, but I think we are missing out the 40%. And we need to look at it. And if we are able to work on that 40% as well, where our capabilities in terms of frugal engineering, and the frugal engineering is the English word for jugaad, which we use. But I think if we can do that, I'm sure that we will be able to really look at being one of the cost leaders in the logistics processes as well.
Very nice. Nice. Animesh, you want to add some finishing touches before we ask?
Almost will echo the same sentiments that Suresh, Sudhir, and Shankar has spoken. At the end of the day, the end-to-end visibility in the supply chain is what would lead to bringing down the cost. So when you're talking about how can we optimize our expense, optimize our cost in the transport sector, is to bring in end-to-end visibility and bringing in the the three building blocks of planning, execution, and post-trip analysis. This will ensure that there is as Suresh mentioned, at least we have the 40% to play with, and that's a huge amount. Yes.
Nice. Jinal, you want to add something from your side?
So I believe we are in an era of consolidation. So to address one of the concerns that we are highly fragmented, yes. But as we move forward, as we grow, I think so we'll see consolidations in industry, more organized play coming in. And as we see, the cost leadership is a function of scale. Like Shankar rightly said, that the cost, the percentage maybe say 13-14% compared to global benchmarks of 8-9. We will certainly reach there the moment we have more organized play into the system. We have better infrastructures and participation of technologies to make it happen. I think so. We are in that phase, and there's no straight answer. It's a process.
Very true. Very true. Thank you so much, Hinal, for moderating this discussion. I think it was a very insightful one. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you to our panelists. I think it was an absolute masterclass, if I should call it so. I think if anybody wants to really improve their supply chain efficiency and also work on their logistics efficiency, I think taking time out to view this one-hour session would really give them numerous takeaways actually to improve whatever they're doing. Thank you so much, Mr. Sudhir, Mr. Shankar, Mr. Suresh, and Mr. Animesh. And thank you to Dobrina as well for setting the context with her presentation. And a quick word for our audience. As always, the presentation will be made available along with a link to watch the entire video recording of the session. And I'd also like to thank our partner HERE Technologies for giving us an opportunity to put together this entire session. So until our next session, thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.